Now, here's something that me and Miss Sully can actually agree on. I'm all for what the courts say. I believe in that. I believe that these people are professional and they know what they're doing. I'm all for it. So I'm gonna let this play for just a minute.
Hey guys, I am here to give you guys some breaking updates. So today we found out through the Court of Criminal Appeals that Melissa Lucio, who has sat on Texas's unalived row, has now been fully exonerated. So Melissa's
Except she has yet to be fully exonerated. Still has to go to the other. Still has to go through a process. They have to take the judge's recommendation. But let's listen.
case gained traction in 2022 and she was set to be executed. However, a few days before her trial, the judge in Court of Criminal Appeals looked at the case again. And since then, due to Darlie Routier's intervention with the Innocence Project,
I guess that they claim that Darlie mentioned her name to the IP in New York. Not sure if Darlie actually did that, but if she did, that's good. She's helping get other people out that don't deserve to be in there. But that doesn't make me change my mind about Darlie at all.
she recommended Melissa Lucio's case to them. They were able to pick it up. So today, Judge Arturo Nelson said that Lucio's charges should be vacated, basically stating that she has been cleared. She has been
No, he just recommends it. But I'm with her on this.
fully exonerated of the unaliving of her 2 year old. Her 2 year old sustained fatal injuries, possibly from falling down a staircase while Melissa was at work. However, the police got a false confession out of Melissa due to several things that we've talked about in our wrongful conviction.
Now, false confessions, I just like the what was that, Brandon Avery in the Stephen Avery case. Yeah, they got a false confession out of him. But if I didn't do something, if I'm being accused of something major, there's nothing going to make me say that I did. Nothing. But I'm not Melissa Lucio.
Videos if you do want to go watch the entire story or listen to it rather on our podcast. I do have it up on YouTube and on Spotify, Apple, and it is women on a death row. All of the other women's stories can be found there. We have been advocating for Melissa as well and praying that she gets out. So I hope that this process goes smoothly for her. Possibly she could even be home for the holidays to be back with her children. So this is a huge step forward for the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And I think that it is a good sign that the not only the Court of Criminal Appeals, the Innocence Project, and in Darlie's case, the Central Integrity Unit is really taking a look at some of these cases, especially here in Texas, where our
It's the Conviction Integrity Unit, not the Central Integrity Unit.
execution rate is the highest, probably worldwide, within the court system anyway. And so, again, I think this is a huge step forward. And I just want to tell Melissa Lucio's family so much love, and I hope that you guys get to reconnect and you guys are able to heal and bond from such a terrible experience.
So now it'll take a while. It's going before the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which will decide. It's not a she's getting out and blah blah blah. It's not that. That's not what was said. But in the petition, they claim that the state used false evidence to obtain her conviction. If the judge looked at it and he sees that too, and he recommends it, that she be released, I'm all for that. The state failed to turn over favorable evidence to the defense at her trial. If they prove that, and they prove this, I'm with them. There is new scientific evidence that Melissa's jury never heard that undermines her conviction. I'm all for this too. Actual innocence. That's what Darlie needs to prove in order to be exonerated. I am all for that. if they prove it on Melissa's case. They took the case in January. So you see how fast it happened for Melissa? It happened quickly for her, right? They took the case in January, right? But Darlie's case they've had for 4 years. Now I don't understand false confessions at all, but I haven't. I've also never been in a position where the police were accusing me of something that I didn't do, and that they were poking. I know how they poke and prod, and I know how they try to get you to tell on yourself. And or they'll tell you, well, your buddy over here, Joe, told us everything, so you might as well fess up. I'm like, well, if Joe told you everything, then I don't need to be in here fessing up. I don't understand false confessions, but I'm not a female. I'm not pregnant, and guilt presumptive police interrogation tactics. They can lie to you if they want. I don't believe in false confessions myself, but again, it could have happened that way. At Miss Lucio's trial, the medical examiner testified that the bruises and the injuries on Mariah's body could only have been caused by abuse. I don't agree with that statement. You know, sometimes kids are rough, they roughhouse, blah, blah, blah. And you have an underlying condition here. However, pathologists who have reviewed the evidence have concluded that this testimony was false. I would agree. The key word is only. The key word to me is only. Mariah's autopsy showed signs of a blood coagulation disorder, which causes profuse bruising throughout the body. They have that from the medical. At the time of her death, Mariah was healing from an injury to her arm, which the medical examiner also said was a sign of abuse. However, a pediatric orthopedic surgeon who reviewed the evidence concluded that the medical examiner's testimony was misleading, and there's nothing about Mariah's fracture that indicates it was a result of abuse. Now, they've had other people look at it. I agree with them. Just like I agree with the doctors in Darlie Routier's case. I agree with them. Now, a lot of people are going to give me shit for this, but when I believe something, I really don't care. Not everybody is guilty. But this has nothing to do with Darlie. This was an extremely common type of injury among toddlers that result from a fall or standing height. Now, she still has to go back through a court process with the Court of Criminal Appeals. Here it says, Miss Lucio will finally have the opportunity to make the case in a court for a new trial to show that her original conviction was based on unreliable and false evidence, which I agree with, and to present the critical evidence of her innocence that was missing from her original trial. At the conclusion of the evidentiary hearings, the trial court will recommend that the Court of Criminal Appeals vacate Miss Lucio's conviction and grant her a new trial, which would give her a chance to be exonerated and ultimately freed from prison. The hearing date has not yet been scheduled. So there's no way it's going to happen before the holidays. All of the new evidence of her innocence has never before been considered by any court. The court stay allows us to continue fighting alongside Melissa until she is free, explained Vanessa Proxy. So I'm happy about this. If this is true, if she was convicted based on this, and we've had other doctors take a look at the case and stuff like that, if the judges recommend it, if she can prove actual innocence, which is what Darlie needs to prove, then I'm all for let her out. I'm all for it. Just a quick AI overview. In Texas, actual innocence means that a person is completely innocent of the crime they are charged with, and not just that the evidence against them was insufficient, which Darlie does not. She signed she signed a statement saying that she's not challenging the evidence. She's more or less challenging the way the court trial took place. To establish actual innocence, a person must provide new evidence. New evidence. This is going to be a problem for Darlie. New evidence that was not available at their trial and show that it would have changed the outcome of the case. The new evidence is strong and reliable. 85J. That's what they're trying to get that print done. If that print shows that another person was in that house, because it's in blood, if it shows that, then, that's what they're hoping for. It could lead to an actual innocence for her. The new evidence would have led to a different outcome, and no reasonable juror would have convicted the person. Actual innocence is a defense that's often raised in post-conviction challenges. It's different from affirmative defenses, which argue that the defendant committed the crime and should be held accountable. Now, I'm all for Darlie to get in a new trial, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to show you why. Darlie will have a huge problem with the affidavit of Darren Routier. All right? If she got a new trial, in this affidavit, he claims that on the night of the murders, that she asked him for a separation, and that he had asked several people, multiple people, to break in his house. But he never names those people. And the court could question why the family, after so many years, has never pressured him to name these people. They've never once. They'll come after us. Everybody's lying. They'll come after us, but they're not pressuring Darren to name the multiple people that he asked. You can see Skip Hollingsworth talk about it. I think he writes for Texas Monthly. Darlie's going to have a problem with that. Because, the prosecution would bring Darren to the stand on a new trial. He's not married to her anymore, so he can't play that I don't have to testify against my wife shit. It'll be a huge problem for Darlie. Also, Robbie Gene Key. All right? He said the same thing. Why has the family not pressured Darren to name these people? That'd be a question that would be brought up in a new trial. I'll just scroll down real quick, and you can pause it to read it. Note that this was done around in 2002. I think it was in July. In 1994, I spoke to a person about my Jaguar automobile. In that conversation, I said that it wouldn't bother me if the Jaguar was stolen. Okay. Now, even though my interview with Beja is not available on YouTube anymore, does not mean that it hasn't been copied. Does not mean, because they watch. I'm telling you. RPD watches, they watch. Doesn't mean it hadn't been copied. And Beja told exactly about this. It was a white Jaguar. She said that Darlie knew all about it. Beja's still alive. And if subpoenaed, she would come in and tell that story like she told me. It was a white Jaguar. She said it's in Hamilton, Ohio. Rich says it's in the bottom of the lake. It's not. It's in Hamilton, Ohio. Who would ruin a beautiful car like that when you just get rid of it? In March or April 1996, I asked my father-in-law, Robbie Gene Key, who is convicted of auto theft, by the way, if he knew anyone who would agree to burglarize my home as part of an insurance scam. I said I would arrange for my family to be absent from my house at 5801 Eagle Drive. This is something that Darren and Robbie G and Key can be questioned about in a new trial. That someone who I would hire would come to pick up the house and take the furniture and other items from my house in a U-Haul truck. Like nobody would see a U-Haul truck taking it late at night. Think about it. Everybody saw this black car, but nobody would notice a U-Haul truck pulling up and grabbing that stuff out of there. You have Guzman. You have, what is her name? Nelda Watts, I think her name was. You have the Neals that live across the street. Nobody would see a U-Haul truck. This is a fake story. That I would pay that person from the proceeds of the resulting insurance payments. You know, they keep on talking about how Darlie didn't have any money for her appeals and please send money, please send money. Why did they leave $12,000 worth of drapes in that house? Between March 1996 and May 1996, I told multiple people of my planned insurance scam. This is a problem. The reason he's saying multiple people and he didn't want to name anybody here is because it's a lie. He can't accuse them. He can't. If they say, "Well, I told so and so," and they bring him in, he didn't talk to me. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Now here's a lie within the first written statements. In the late evening of June 5, 1996, I had a verbal disagreement with my wife, Darlie Routier. During that discussion, my wife asked me for a marital separation. That's not in either one of their first statements to the police. I first met with attorney Douglas Moeller in July 1996. I met at least once a week with Mr. Moeller in July 1996. The subject of the meeting was Mr. Moeller's potential representation of my wife, Darlie Routier, and I in her criminal trial. I continued to meet with Mr. Moeller in August 1996. During one of the meetings I had with Mr. Moeller, he told me that the court-appointed attorneys in my wife's case, Wayne Huff and Douglas Parks, had confided in him that they were going to try and portray me as the person guilty of the murder of my sons, Devin and Damon, because they thought that I had something to do with the deaths of my sons. That's why they got rid of them. I told Mr. Moeller that if we hired him, I did not want him to go after me. Mr. Moeller agreed that if hired to represent my wife, he would not argue as part of the defense that I was in any way responsible for the death of my children. Between July 1996 and late September 1996, I continued to meet regularly with Mr. Moeller. On September 30, 1996, Mr. Moeller represented me at a show cause hearing before Judge Toll, where the state of Texas alleged that I violated a gag order in the criminal case against my wife. Well, he did. He did violate the gag order along with Darlie because they went on a radio station. In September and October 1996, I believe I based Mr. Moeller's comments to me that he was my attorney. This would be a huge problem for her if she gets a new trial. And when we go back to the Lucio case, it says Melissa Lucio was just 2 days away from being put to death in Texas for the murder of her 2-year-old daughter, Mariah, when an appeals court intervened in 2022. So the appeals court had already intervened, right? So this leads me to believe that Darlie didn't have much to do with it. She just says she did. Darlie also stood strong for Lisa Coleman when the appeals court intervened in 2022. Now, a judge says Lucio never committed the crime at all. Applicant is actually innocent. She did not kill her daughter. State District Judge Arturo C. Nelson wrote in an October filing released to the public Thursday. It is now up to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which had asked the judge to revisit the case to determine whether Lucio should be released. It doesn't say anything about Darlie sticking up for her. After 16 years on death row, it's time for nightmare to end. Melissa should be home right now with her children and grandchildren. Vanessa Potkin with the Innocence Project, one of Lucio's attorneys, said Thursday. The case highlights an inherent risk of capital punishment, putting an innocent person to death. At least 200 persons sentenced to die since 1973 were later exonerated. One is too many, including 18 in Texas, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. Lucio is one of 7 women on death row in Texas, which includes 174 condemned inmates in all. No execution date has been set for Lucio since the Criminal Court of Appeals ordered Nelson to review the case. Not Darlie. No further hearings were scheduled in the case as of Friday, and it was not clear when the appellate judges might consider Nelson's ruling. There is no time frame within the Criminal Court of Appeals has to decide a case that's submitted to them. Lucio's family hopes the decision comes quickly. This is the best news we can get along the holidays. Let's look at the critical errors in the trial. Remember, Darlie's trial has been gone over and over and over. Even Darlie doesn't. After an hours-long interrogation, which she insisted she was innocent, Lucio ultimately said she was responsible for what happened to her daughter in 2007, but never made an express admission to causing her daughter's death. Nelson's ruling states, Lucio's defense has maintained that she never actually confessed to causing the death of a 2-year-old Mariah Alvarez. Nelson recommended earlier this year that Lucio's conviction be overturned because the state withheld evidence showing that Mariah might have died from an accidental fall down the stairs rather than because of physical abuse. Now, if they have evidence of her falling down the stairs, my corgi. That's my corgi in the background. He doesn't like nobody go around him when he's eating. He's weird. Now, if they have evidence that baby fell down the steps, then this is just cause. Lucio's attorneys in the Cameron County District Attorney's Office more than a year later submitted a court filing, including an acknowledgement that the state withheld evidence favorable to Lucio, with both sides agreeing she was entitled to relief. The new findings of fact is much different than the Darlie case. This court concludes that there is clear and convincing evidence that no rational juror would convict an appellant of capital murder or any lesser offense, Nelson wrote his ruling this week. Lucio's jury trial was improperly influenced by a prosecution witness claiming he could determine Lucio's credibility based on her demeanor during testimony. I don't give that much. Nelson found a claim the court ruled has been scientifically debunked. Not going to happen in Darlie's case. The jury also should have been informed that Lucio was a victim of physical and sexual abuse, which increase a person's risk of false conviction. Another thing that can be brought up in Darlie's case is the fact that she was a victim of sexual abuse from an early age. This is something else that can be brought up in a new trial. What does that lead to? PTSD.
The Court of Criminal Appeals issued a stay of your execution for reinstatement. Are you serious?
My goodness. Representative Leach told the Texas Tribune on Monday, quote, "I am so glad that we did what we did 2 years ago to step up and, let's not mince words, to stop the state from murdering Melissa Lucio."
Now, you notice this has nothing to do with Darlie. None of the news, that Darlie wants to say, yeah, she's told the Innocence Project about her. No, the Innocence Project probably already knew because of this recommendation, and the stay of execution, because they're on that type of stuff.
End quote. He has worked for years to get rid of the death penalty here in Texas.
And here we can see no execution date has been set for Lucio since the Criminal Court of Appeals ordered Nelson to review the case. No further hearings were scheduled in the case as of Friday, and it's not clear when the appellate judges might consider Nelson's ruling. Now I'm looking at the IP of New York. Notice they got the donation, donate once, donate monthly. They want money. Any gift today is up at the top. These are some of the cases that they're representing right now. Why did they have Darlie's posted on here? These are some of the cases that they've actually helped people get exonerated. But Darlie, so if I search in here, oops. Oh, don't spell it wrong. Nothing. Nothing about Darlie Routier.